Start with making a difference.
This is the point, right?
Your pain points, do something about it. We have become quite apathetic within South Africa. This is the status quo. There's nothing really that can be done. I challenge that because I really believe there is change that can be made. So our solution, I think, is come up with these teams of people that can be on the ground, that can perform functions that government is supposed to deliver on, but may not have the means.
How much does that social media and that virality of what you're creating drive this movement?
I think video as a medium has the ability to convey emotion beyond any other medium. That's the way that you really create that empathy and that feeling around the brand. We set up beach cleanups, we set up buyback recycling centers. We kind of created a lot of media awareness of South Africa's litter problem. Your brand has the amazing opportunity to move into that in space and say, right, we're here to help.
Yeah.
How do we add value to Gauteng? It's those kind of situations or scenarios that we try and create where everybody wins. The first step to your new journey is literally the first step. So send the email, make the meeting appointment, do one thing in the right direction that will lead to a whole new adventure and a whole new journey.
Welcome to the Corner Office, where we bring you the latest news from the world of commercial real estate, the greatest voices in the industry, and the corporate chats you've been missing. Let's get to it.
We got Michael Baretta on today, and he's the MD of Good. He's a seasoned professional in marketing, brand activation, been doing this for over 2 decades, although he doesn't look like it. He's involved in purpose-driven marketing. He's going to talk to us about some of the strategies and building meaningful connection between brands and their audiences and what they've done, a couple of stories. We're going to talk about dogs, we're going to talk about vodka, and we're going to talk about parks. So it's going to be an interesting chat. Michael, we're talking about Good, which is quite exciting. And it's actually great to have you in here because you've been trying to get in here for ages. And no, I wanted to have you in here for ages, and we've managed to finally find a time that works. So I'm excited to talk about it, especially since originally starting this business from walking around the whole of South Africa, which was quite an ordeal, to where it is now. It's just like this business which has grown and grown and grown and has done so much for the community, but has also done so much for the brands that work with these communities. So it's going to be quite an interesting chat. So awesome. Thanks for dropping in.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, tell me about Good. What is Good and what are you trying to ultimately do?
So Good is South Africa's leading cause marketing agency. So we look at marketing slightly differently, and we think, how can we build a brand and meet their objectives, but also benefit communities, the environment, or any other for good pursuit, but ultimately looking at the objectives and how we can best meet the needs of the client, but also look at the audiences that the brands serve and how we can serve them as well. We are now in our 11th year. So it was a very long time ago that I walked the coastline of South Africa. You may see in the footage, I look a lot older now than I did that. We really have grown in leaps and bounds. We work with 2 kinds of organizations, so brands that want to make a difference, and then large internationally funded organizations that mainly work in the health space. So we deliver on their mandate. So if they need to test tens of thousands of people for HIV, TB, or whatever the case may be, we create a marketing platform to attract those people and to deliver the services for them.
So why, if I look at it, like, why are the brands doing it? Okay, and I know this is a general question, right? But you've got a lot of brands out there that are doing well. They, they're running their businesses and they're sort of moving ahead. Why are brands trying to achieve this? Is it stemming from the stakeholders, the clients or the customers at least, or is it coming from the management team, and is it coming from internal in terms of they want to do good, or they're trying to connect with the markets that they are serving?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think cause marketing is an international trend, but I think it's very apparent in South Africa, where there is so much need in this country, and particularly for brands that service a specific LSM, so call it LSM 4 to 7, which is a mid to low LSM, where people are in need, people are struggling. And I think brands have the potential to make a difference in the lives of their consumers because of their big marketing budgets. And what a campaign that benefits a client does or a customer does is it creates a long-lasting relationship with that customer. So that customer is going to become more loyal to your brand. They're going to keep buying your brand. Even if there's a price special on another product, they're like, well, this brand supported me through hard times. I feel loyal to that brand and I will continue to support them in return.
So it's not only, in that instance, it's like a customer that's seeing some benefit from it or their community and whatever. But we were talking earlier about, let's say the customer is a LSM 12 or, much higher sort of earning level, and they're not really requiring any of this help, but perhaps they're in a community or they are selling their product into a community that needs this help. How does that pair up? How do you try and build that connection, looking at that brand who's typically, take Investec, for example, that's probably a good example. The guys that work there are wealthy. The clientele that they serve are wealthy. How are you trying to build that community aspect into a brand like that? Don't have to use Investec, but maybe it's an example,
I think
type of example.
The best example for that is you'll remember the brands that helped you through COVID. During COVID was the first time that LSM set in South Africa were in need, because we didn't know what was happening. No one knew what was happening. And the brands that offered you interest rate rebates or kind of gave you longer time to pay back your loans or kind of gave you flexible terms, you were still impacted positively by those brands. So it doesn't have to always be, about the end beneficiary. But for example, you're looking at a bank. How can a bank make change to benefit their immediate customers? It's find out what those customers care about. It may be the environment. It may be the rhinos. It may be the degradation in Johannesburg, which is also too apparent for everyone. So what is their emotional pain point in terms of general improvement of society, and see how you can improve within that space. And that's how you can, by demonstrating that you're committed to what they care about, build that long-lasting relationship that we spoke about.
Got you. So, as an idea, and this was something I mentioned to you, was, in Thabo Mbeki's time, he came up with this idea that you should be able to go and almost tender, the different departments should be able to go and bid for projects that the government was wanting to achieve. So it was almost they became like a central policy and central deployment type of agency. And then the different departments came and bid, we can do this, we can do this. And so effectively what they were doing is they were saying, here are a list of things that could be helped in this country, okay? And people could go and choose, well, that's a low-hanging fruit, or that's close to us, we could do this, it's easy for us, or whatever it might be. This is a bit more of a big one. And you go and look at what the DA tried to achieve in Cape Town. They literally did that. They said, right, how are we going to get the vote here? Let's look at all the things that could be done in the Western Cape, and let's tackle the small ones first. Don't go for the biggest one, because it's going to be the hardest. You're going to need the most capital. People don't trust you. You don't have a track record. Go for the small one. Go for the one that's maybe a little bit easier to achieve. And people say, oh, there's actually movement here. There's actually an impact that's being made here. Now we can get on board, and now the corporates start to follow through. So how do like, as a country, and I know you working within a sort of environment of your clients, right? And the needs that they have. But how would you say you could pull it together as a country and say, well, these are the things we want to achieve as a country, and how do I align these corporates to these ideas that we're trying to put together? Is there
I don't know
any thinking like that?
I don't know if I have the answer to that question. It does sound like an ideal scenario whereby there's kind of almost the sustainable development goals within South Africa in terms of what is most pressing, and then maybe create a blueprint in order to do that. I think you need very strong leadership, and could come from the private sector or government, but I don't necessarily think that it would work within the private sector. So it really needs to come from government in terms of let's work together. We've spent the time in creating the plan. This is how you can plug in. But I think short of that, it's do one thing. Start with making a difference.
This is the point, right?
Your pain points, do something about it. And I don't know if I'm happy to say this on air, but I watched the Martha movie, and the key thing.
Sorry, which movie did you watch?
The Martha movie, which is actually really interesting if you haven't seen it. But the one key takeout that I took from that was just if you don't like something, change it, do something about it. And I think that we have become quite apathetic within South Africa that, this is the status quo. There's nothing really that can be done. And I challenge that because I really believe there is change that can be made. It just takes strong-willed people and a lot of time to do that.
Yeah. I mean, one of our engineering clients at one stage said you can pretty much do anything as long as you have enough time and money. Literally. Say something, time and money, you're going to get the thing done.
And we have lots of money in this country. There's a huge amount of money here.
If you were to, going back to this idea, right? If you were to say, here are some ideas, because you almost want to start aligning, what the guys are going to do. Because, you say you go to a corporate and you say, of your stakeholders, what are the pain points? What's your purpose? Where do you want to go? In a corporate which is doing banking or they're an architect or whatever they're doing, right? They're running their businesses and now they've got to stop and say, right, what do our stakeholders care about? And it's quite a lot of like heavy lifting to do to get through just their client base or their customer base to start off with. Maybe as an internal, you could decide, but you know what it's like when guys are focused on deals and you say, guys, what are we passionate about? Shut up, we're doing deals, So you almost want to say, here are the ideas, right? Who's interested in these different ideas, and almost pair the people up with their different, shopping list of ideas, and so they can get some momentum. Yeah. Also, here's the track record of what we've done. I just like that idea. I feel like it feels simple. For me, I always want to know how much it's going to cost, how long is it going to take, what's in it for me.
Yeah. What's in it for me, I think, is key. And that's why I think it must be your brand's purpose. So what your organization wants to do in the space, that should drive you in terms of how you want to make change. And also for it to work and for it to be sustainable it must be a commercially minded decision. What is the difference we want to make, and how is that going to make or add value to us as an authentic organization that operates responsibly within this country. One of our clients uses the term to earn the right to operate within communities. That's what every single company should be doing in terms of how they think and how they engage with change.
I actually quite like that. Earn the right to operate in communities. So as a business though, as you guys operating in this space, what do you find the general engagement with the client is like? So you start off with a client. So let's say guys are watching now and they say, this sounds fantastic, we like to engage. What does that engagement look like? How do you help them to evaluate what their purpose is? Some guys are going to come, it's going to be the perfect client and say, this is our purpose, this is exactly what we want to achieve. But I'm guessing 99% of the time it's not like that.
The purpose also changes from time to time. But ultimately we are driven by a marketing objective. So is it that you want to build brand awareness? Is it that you want to create meaningfulness? And that's really what brand purpose taps into. And meaningfulness means relevance and that emotional connection. Do you want to drive sales? Do you want to drive volume of signups? Do you want to change people's behavior with regards to a certain purchasing pattern? Whatever that objective is, we say, right, cool, that is the key objective in terms of your marketing output. But how can we also look at the solution that we present to that client, which we develop, it's custom each time, and make an impact in one way or another, hopefully linked to their ultimate purpose, which they would include in the brief and the counter. If they don't have that purpose, we say, right, what is it that you do? I mean, we had a quick chat before and I was like, you may not have a clearly defined purpose, but you had a very clear picture in your mind about how Galetti can make difference within the communities that it serves. And your community is your customers, who is essentially landowners. And what are their pain points and how do they engage with their ecosystem? So our solution, I think, to you would be, and I think we mentioned it, is come up with these teams of people that can be on the ground, that can perform functions that government is supposed to deliver on, or local municipality is supposed to deliver on, but may not have the means. We hear that a lot. I think it's about expertise. I don't think that municipalities have the expertise in order to deliver on those basic services. And I think your brand has the amazing opportunity to move into that in space and say, right, we're here to help in those public-private partnerships that you were talking about. And how do we add value to Gauteng or South Africa as a whole?
I think, one of the other ideas you came up with was, perhaps there's a property which you sold, an auction property, there's a problematic park down the road. How do you try and impact those specific things that mean something to those specific people. And we were talking a little bit more generally about, our clients are the landowners. Yeah. So you could actually go and look to the broader kind of community or area, or exactly like you're saying. So effectively, like a SID, with the IP and the knowledge that we have, we know who owns all of these buildings. We know what they're trying to achieve, and ultimately it's increase the value of their properties and drive usability. Because if you look at it, I mean, Rosebank versus Sandton, okay? Rosebank's got very little vacancy. Sandton's got a lot of vacancy. And Sandton's a great area. There's nothing wrong with Sandton. But what specifically is actually wrong with Sandton? Specifically is the pedestrian doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's nothing's outward facing. Whereas you look in Rosebank, everyone's happy to walk around here. You can go up to Proud Mary, you can walk to the mall, through the mall, back out again. It's like a nice environment to walk in. Whereas and trees and all the rest of it. Whereas Sandton just doesn't have that right.
I think Discovery is trying to tackle that, though. I mean, I have read some headlines that they say that they're trying to create something similar in that same kind of culture, and that's a great way talking about walking. I mean, that's exactly what Discovery and Courage is, right?
Yeah.
Exercise,
Yeah.
being outside, being in nature, and getting your step count in.
Yeah. Instead of
so that's
sitting in the office.
Purpose.
Yeah. So I mean, I just think it's. There's so many of these like little things that you can do that become something that, like you're saying, if you go and link that purpose back to Discovery, it has this whole story that sort of pulls through to them and they can really leverage on it. So your business internally, the people that are working there, how do you keep them not only inspired to do what they do, but they're delivering. They're seeing the on the ground impact that they're making. So how does that drive a culture in your business, and what kind of culture are you looking to drive in your business?
Yeah. I've got such a great answer to that question. So we recently have just done this campaign called Bread for Bricks, which is for a premier FMCG owned brand, and it's a KZN regional brand. It's a very, very big KZN regional brand. And basically the campaign is that the more bread consumers buy, the more bricks the company donates to build houses for vulnerable communities. And we had quite a big team there. I think we had probably five people on the ground. And at the launch, the feeling of seeing the keys handed over to someone who doesn't have a home was the reason that my team do what they do. I cried for 5 minutes. It was such a moving and I hate to say it, but self-gratifying experience, because I felt good because we were involved in it.
Yeah.
And obviously the beneficiary felt great because they got a house. And it's those kind of situations or scenarios that we try and create where everybody wins. The bread brand sold a lot of bread.
Yeah.
And we gave away 4 houses.
Amazing.
Everyone wins. So win-win.
And you find
that the team wins, to answer your question, is the team really take purpose and they all have the individual passions. So some are into education, little kids, some love the environment. And luckily they all kind of play in these different spaces. So the clients and the campaigns are then directed to them dependent on what their passion points are. So they get to work on stuff that they love every day, which I think is pretty fulfilling.
Yeah. And do you find that, when you're going to go choose this project because you've got to link the two together, right? So you say, this is what we're going to do. Is it that community that's getting the sort of, not only do they get the benefit out of it, but they're now ultimately saying, okay, well, there are these 4 houses, right? That community's benefited, but only these few people that have benefited. So is it like an extended campaign where they keep going? They say we can do more, and so more people get behind it. Now, what happens? People in the other community, are they saying, well, what's happening with our bread? Like we're also buying this bread. Like what's happening here? Or is there more demand like that? Are they asking the question, or is it that sort of, or is it the overall purpose of the people that are buying this bread is saying these guys are giving back to communities, ours will be next? And
I think the ultimate emotion is gratitude.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people in these communities see any advancement at all. And yes, maybe there's at the back of their mind thinking, well, maybe why don't they come to our community? But then buy more bread in that community, and then that will happen. And you asked about pairing NGOs and brands. So that is one of our functions. We prefer to create custom solutions and deliver results ourselves, because I think it's all about delivering results. And when you attach a brand to a project, you need to ensure that it happens, because there's nothing worse than dangling carrot and then not following through. And with all due respect to NGOs, there's some very well-run NGOs, but there are also other NGOs that sometimes are a little bit slower and more empathetic in terms of their delivery, when our focus is really on the output.
Gotcha. With these marketing channels that you effectively bringing out, right? How much does that social media and that virality of what you're creating drive this movement? You know, where are you seeing your sort of main channels that you're putting this in? How do you try and build the story forward to people? Because you can't just say, this is what we're doing and here they are, you know, that would miss the whole point of it. You know, there's got to be a buy-in and a story that people are taking through. And I find, you know, storytelling in anything, even in our business, the more we tell stories and the more engagement there is. Whereas if you just say that we sold this or we did that, there's far less engagement from our stakeholders. So how do you do that, and how does social media play a part?
Yeah, so 100%. I mean, it's quite ironic that we are on a video podcast, but I think video as a medium has the ability to convey emotion beyond any other media. But I mean, potentially second to radio. So we obviously put a huge amount of spend into the awareness part of the campaign, because ultimately, as I mentioned, our objective is to drive volumes of the bread. But then you've got to definitely close the loop in terms of, well, you promised this to this community, to creating engagement. And then we would also interview the beneficiaries in terms of, what does this, I'm going to go back to the house example, what does this house mean to you? And that's the way that you really create that empathy and that feeling around the brand that taps into that brand meaningfulness that I mentioned, that makes people loyal to your brand and have a real warm feeling around the brand. And that's what keeps them coming back.
Got you. I want to talk about you.
Okay.
So let's go back to, it was even before that, because I remember you were even working in the magazine at one stage, you know, so you've always been in a creative space, in a marketing space. And then I think you're a creative counsel at one point. And then, you know, so you've had this career that you've kind of like refined into ultimately the idea that you've deployed here, which is Doc Good, which is now 11
years old.
11 years ago, right? Take me back through your career where you're sort of entering this marketing arena and you're seeing these things around you. What ultimately gave you this idea that this is what I want to do and this is where we're going with the business?
Yeah, so it was 12 years ago that Trekking for Trash happened. And I think what got me to Trekking for Trash was this junction. I think I was turning 30 at the time, and then I thought 30 was old. now I'm 43. Now I think 30 is okay. Yeah. And I was looking for meaning in life. And I attended a talk by a guy called David Greer, and he's quite a well-known adventurer. And he had run a marathon a day along the roads of the coastline. I must clarify, roads along the coastline of South Africa. And it was to raise funds for his charity, Miles for Smiles, which fixes kids with cleft palates through an operation, which is an amazing initiative. And I was like, wow, what a cool idea. And I run around Zoo Lake, and I'd like to talk about the Zoo Lake project actually. Run around Zoo Lake every second day, and it always frustrated me how there was so much litter that was just left in one of the very few places in Joburg that you can go to enjoy the outdoors. And I just really couldn't understand that disconnect. It's like, you're going here for the outdoors and you're enjoying the outdoors, yet you leave it in such a way that you don't want to return. How does that work? Anyway, it's very complex, and there's a lot of socioeconomic reasons for that. And then eventually I thought, why don't I combine the two, the passion for the litter and trying to get people to understand the importance of litter and how it ties into various other socioeconomic channels with this amazing idea of doing an adventure along the coastline of South Africa. So that's kind of how Trekking for Trash was born.
So just for everyone, I mean, I know what it was and I remember the whole adventure, but just explain it in detail what you did.
Sure, yeah. So it was a 3,600 kilometer walk on foot, obviously. No other way to do it, along South Africa's coastline. And it was a mutual friend of ours, Camilla Howard. And we collected litter every single day for 7 months. And what we did is we set up kind of talks at schools. We set up little beach cleanups. We set up buyback recycling centers at various different towns along the way. And we kind of created a lot of media awareness of South Africa's litter problem. And all the litter that is created here in Gauteng and the other inland provinces lands up in the rivers and then flows down the rivers to the sea. So it's really the coastline that suffers the worst from kind of general pollution and littering. So we thought that was a nice way to create nationwide awareness of the importance of littering as well as recycling.
On that, your takeouts of walking around 3,600 Ks around the coastline, more litter than you can imagine?
100%.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I think we voted Durban as the dirtiest city in South Africa because coastal city of South Africa. And then I think the Durban municipality got wind of this. So everywhere beyond Durban, there were like big black bags of cleaned up beach litter so that we couldn't tell.
They were front running.
Couldn't tell any more bad news bad news about them.
And then I remember you saying back then, a lot of snakes.
Yeah, loads of snakes. And I had a serious phobia for snakes at that point. But then I realized that they actually aren't so bad unless you stand on them.
Which is an amazing trip. And then, okay, so then from that, you sort of roll out this business. I mean, that must have started pretty soon after that, right?
It was, I mean, we did get quite a lot of attention. So it was quite easy to segue from that venture into the business. But I think it was really that.
And that was Collect a Can.
Nampak's metal division, and then their collection agency was Collect a Can. And I think the reason why it came so quickly is because we had long time to think. I mean, it was actually very difficult to talk to each other while we were walking because the waves were really loud or the wind was really loud, and it was just difficult to engage. So we were walking in silence for quite a long time. So almost like a walking meditation. And through that journey, I realized that it is possible to build brands, drive sales, and then do good all at the same time, because that's essentially what we were doing for our sponsors, is promoting metal packaging as the most environmentally friendly form of packaging. We never saw metal cans because they either kind of dissolve
or collected
into the ground or collected because they're so valuable. Exactly. Yeah. So it was a great message. We also went to their various factories, which were their clients. We did talks there to their customers. So we looped in all the various different stakeholders to create a very holistic campaign for them. And I thought that was an amazing blueprint for campaigns going forward, which is obviously now what we do.
And now we come through all the way to today. And one of the recent one was Tito's Vodka, right? So I know Tito's Vodka, I won't say why, but no, Tito's Vodka is an interesting brand because this is I think it's the biggest vodka brand in the US, right? It's this massive, massive brand, but it has this brand purpose and it's completely not what you think. So tell us about it.
It's really cool, actually. So the brand purpose for Tito's Vodka is to improve the lives of dogs and their owners. I think his name was Tito. I would imagine probably is Tito. The guy who started Tito's Vodka had this really small factory and they had all these stray dogs and they kept on feeding the dogs and watering the dogs and sending them to be deticked and fleed and whatever. And eventually, like over time, the factory got bigger and bigger and bigger and there were more and more dogs. And they decided, well, this has been baked into our culture and our heritage. So this should become who we are and what we stand for. So in America, they're known as the Vodka for Dog People. And when they launched in South Africa, they were like, how do we tap into this brand purpose and how do we deliver purpose in action? So Parkhurst, as you may know, has a long street of bars and cafes and is one of the biggest consumers of premium alcohol in the country. It is also known as Parkhurst because of all the dogs that live in Parkhurst, and there are lots of dog parks, and there's the Spruit that people can walk on. So it was an amazing synergy. So we developed this campaign whereby Tito's came in and invested heavily in safety in terms of fencing for the dogs, so the dogs couldn't run out of the dog park. And also there'd been a number of incidents of crime in the Spruit, one particularly where a dog was shot. So it was a great opportunity to say, right, we're going to make Parkhurst safe for dogs and their walkers. And then we went to the traders and said, right, we've invested X hundred of thousands of rands from the brand. We'd now like you to partner with us for future improvement by listing Tito's in your bars and your restaurants. And then we did all sorts of like dog-friendly promotions where they had like a pop-up and water stations and all of that kind of. So we created a culture and an environment. And I think Parkhurst is seen as an opinion leader in terms of lifestyle and entertainment. And I think it kind of just created momentum and traction around all of the wealthy suburbs of Joburg. And I think you see Tito is now listed in all of the bars and cafes.
And and so would you say, well, you'll know, but you say they've seen a direct correlation to what they've been doing and sales?
Yeah, well, I think the sales, I think it was 1,500% return in the investment in terms of the sales.
Wow.
So there's no disputing that doing good is good for the bottom line.
Jeez, that's amazing.
And I think that's really what we try and drive home. It's not just about philanthropy. I don't really believe in handouts, because handouts, you're never going to see the outcome of a handout. It's like, how do you work with your beneficiaries or your customers to create an ecosystem of, right, we'll continue to support you if you continue to support us.
And how do you, I mean, you're dealing with big corporates, big numbers. How are you going to deal with a client with smaller numbers? Although, in listening to the Parkhurst story, obviously they're able to take a margin on what they're selling there already. So it's the liquid in the bottle, and so they've got something to play with in terms of the value that
they're the biggest brand in America.
They're also the biggest brand in America. So they're massive.
They've
Yeah.
got some budget.
Yeah. So, but I mean, how do you deal with sort of smaller businesses, the SMEs, outside of the major corporates, or is it just the major corporates that is your focus? Or how do you sort of try and focus on this is going to be our client base? I suppose you're trying to move the needle, right? So you need to focus on those big corporates. That's the game, 100%. Right? Because
so I'm a capitalist at heart, but that wants to make a difference. So we kind of don't do anything south of a 250,000 Rand budget, purely because it's very difficult to meet so many different objectives, where a traditional marketing agency, and there's so many of them out there, will go and do one thing and it'll be focused. Our USP is, right, we will meet your marketing objectives, but we will also create that emotional connection by doing something else. And I can't always say what that other thing is, because they all are so different and customized. But doing good as well as meeting your business objectives is how we differentiate ourselves within the market.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How do you feel about it specifically in South Africa and Johannesburg, right? Because Johannesburg's had a bit of a hard rap in terms of everyone moving out of Johannesburg.
Well, actually, I read an article the other day, and it's the semigration hotspot, Johannesburg. So
really,
yeah, but that was from last quarter's figures.
Yeah.
So I think,
but listen, there's a lot of, I think, given a lot of the positive news coming through the GNU, and this is happening, and business confidence is up, and people are ready to spend and are excited about what they're doing. Right? You're running a business in Johannesburg. Yeah, the guys are purpose in what they do and all the rest of it, but how do you think you can drive that sort of as a leader in business in Johannesburg to attract the kind of talent that you're attracting? How are you keeping that business in a position where it's a place that people want to work outside of they're achieving good, outside of the business, more in terms of let's unclip it from what you do and say, just as a business in general, as a leader of the business, what are your sort of leadership ideals? What are you trying to create? How are you making it a place that you actually want to work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's salaries and a working environment. Aren't they the two check things? No, I think empowering people to take their own initiative, take their own lead, find projects. So often when we receive a brief, is like, what is the project that you're passionate about? Does it meet the needs? Or can we find a similar project that you feel that can be used as part of this project? And also creating a culture of diversity, I think is hugely important within the context of Gauteng. We have all the colors of the rainbow. We have all the genders of a rainbow. We have all the sexual orientations of the rainbow. And I'm really proud to have created a culture where people feel safe and people feel accepted. And I think it's that autonomy, I think, really gives people the sense of pride in what they do. And
would you say, I mean, in terms of the culture of the business, would you say it's like a performance culture, or would you say it's a culture where the the best ideas go to the top, and it's really sort of a place that you feel inspired to bring ideas to. Like, what are you trying to create on a day-to-day?
Yeah, I'd love to be an inspiring business, but I think in reality, what it comes down to is delivery and making sure that our projects deliver with excellence. So I think we definitely are an outputs-based agency and focus on making sure that things happen on time. So quite task-orientated in terms of output, but obviously the team has the freedom to come up with creative ideas and present them internally. I mean, we always lead with the idea with the client. I always think that sometimes part of the problem is the client's always looking for the most creative idea when it's not the creative idea that's going to solve the problem. It's like the most logical, most practical.
Execution.
Yeah, execution is the most practical problem or solution that hasn't been delivered well that is going to solve your problem. So that for me is a constant balance, is how do you kind of present the big fluffy idea that everyone gets super excited about, that also has impact, that also drives sales, but then also have that level of practicality that actually does move the needle in terms of things that it needs to do.
And where do you see corporates going sort of next year? Do you find it's been like a more difficult market? People have been constrained. There's no real GDP growth up until now. We've had problems with power. We've had problems with water. We've got more problems with water. There's been, South Africa's come out of a very bad news environment for a long time. Yeah. Where do you see your entire market going and the sort of positive business sentiment and investment sentiment has got to drive your sector, right? How do you see that impacting? How do you see 2025 unfolding? And where do you see South Africa in 2025? What are you feeling in the market, in your business and with your clients, and what are they saying?
Yeah, I'm feeling very confident, I think, despite the lack of growth. I think that it will grow, and it will grow with time. I think we all know that. That's why we're here, and this is why we're putting in the effort. I think what this time reinforces is the great need that we have within the country, and the need to take ownership of those needs and to tell a brand story around those. So for our business, I am optimistic. I think going forward beyond 2025, I think the idea of, we spoke about CSI and marketing, I think the idea of CSI will kind of fall away, and it's going to become one objective in terms of communication and marketing. What is it that your business wants to achieve, and how do you do that with both the need of the community and your business's need? So gone are the days where I think you're going to see ads out there. This is what we do. This is what we sell. This is our promotion. It's going to be more of a dialogue. How can we help you, consumer? What is it that you need from us in order for you to stick and stay loyal for us? And also, relatively new concept within South Africa, course marketing. I know that we say it's been around for 11 years. Really, it's only been in the last 3 years when it's gained popular traction, where people understand what it is. And I think it was post-COVID that once people that were privileged in this country actually understood what it was like to be in need, they were like, oh my gosh, there is opportunity for brands to make change within this space.
Yeah. And globally, as a trend in terms of cause marketing, who would you say is the sort of who's leading in that arena?
Yeah, I mean, I think the UK is really good. I mean, also it's got a number of different categories within the Cannes Lions and all of those kind of things. So it is internationally recognized. Mexico delivers some amazing work as well in terms of the impact space. I think it's probably the countries that have the ability to make change that really deliver groundbreaking work, where I would say the more Northern Hemisphere solutions are very kind of lofty in terms of their concept, as opposed to like that really gritty change that we're trying to create in South Africa.
Yeah, I suppose here with not a massive amount of money that the corporates have to invest, you can actually make quite a massive impact on people's lives, where, like you're saying, it's a little bit harder in the UK. Tell me, if you could give sort of one thing for corporates to think about now, just sort of an idea that people could think about at their corporate, like not only what are you trying to say, but how do you formulate your purpose? What would that be?
Sure, it's a very difficult question to answer, but I think I think the nature of your business really is the first step in terms of defining your purpose. So what is it that you do? Like, do you sell building? Do you auction buildings? Using a very obvious example here. And how can what you do commercially leave a lasting legacy beyond just making money? And it doesn't, and I think often people go, for example, your building company is not going to go and support the SPCA. There's a massive jump between building and animals, unless you suddenly go into cattle farms, auctioning cattle farms. There's no real correlation between the cause.
We're in the built environment.
Built environment, 100%. So what difference can your company make within the built environment? And then I would have a workshop with your key stakeholders, starting with your staff. It's like, how do you feel, saying to your staff, how do you feel we can make a difference? What is it that you feel passionate within the context of what we do? Then kind of sense check that with your external stakeholders. Like, does this resonate? Does this add value to the authenticity? Because with all this transparency and social media, everyone knows what your company does. Does this add value to who we are as a company? Because that's critical to a brand purpose. And does that elevate the way that your consumers see you? If it does, great. Find a cause, find a way to do it. And then I think the key advice is do one thing. You asked me off air, what was one of the key things that I learned from a business perspective from Trekking for Trash. And I think the most interesting thing is like the first step to your new journey is literally the first step. So send the email, make the meeting appointment, try and do one thing in the right direction that will lead to a whole new adventure and a whole new journey.
Yeah. I love it. It's been a great chat. It's given us a bit to think about, I think, as a business, because as a business, you try all these small initiatives, but you're not actually thinking bigger about like, what is your actual purpose for doing this and how does it align with what you're doing? So it's definitely given me a few things to think about, but also a few things to chat about with the team, because making these small impacts doesn't really translate to what's the story and what's everyone getting behind. At one point we'd had, like I told you, at our auctions, you could, as a bidder, you could register what your favorite charity was. You just literally had to tick a box. And if your bid was successful, we would then donate on your behalf to that charity, right? So people just wouldn't tick the box. Yeah. There was no story to it.
Yeah, it's not meaningful. They may not even know those NGOs that were listed. And I think maybe even with that simple concept is you flipped it on its head and say, right, you could nominate a charity.
Yeah.
That then created meaningfulness for them because they knew the charity. They've got an emotional connection with that organization. Yeah. So by ticking the box, it goes, I can give to that because I know that they're in need.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's exactly what it was. That's how we try to change it. But it really needed more of a story. Yeah. It needed more of a purpose. So yeah. Amazing. Mate, thank you for coming in and chatting to us about it.
Thank you.
It's been an interesting one.
Glad you finally said yes.